There is a place that is spoken about only in whispers, a dark area that spawns the beginnings of urban legends, a place where anything can happen and usually does. During the light of day, it hides just outside of view, but when the sun goes down, spirits, creatures of the night, roam free, and things do go bump in the night. It is in every state and every country, and there is no escaping it, no matter how safe you feel behind your locked doors and latched windows. So we invite you to turn down the lights and turn up your radio while we join Dave Schrader and Tim Dennis, your hosts, on a journey into the darkness on the edge of town.
Hello and welcome. You're tuned into the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Darkness Radio. I'm your host, Dave Schrader. That cute fellow over there, that's Tim Dennis. Hello, Tim.
Aw, hello.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, it's exciting. We're here, folks. We made it. We're all together. Kumbaya, my lord. Kumbaya.
I got to admit something real quick here.
What's that?
When I was a kid, I always thought, the year 2000 seemed so far away. And then I thought 2020 was really far away.
Yeah.
I didn't think anything came after 2020.
Yeah.
I don't know what to think about 2021 because it was beyond my imagination.
I do think it's funny. Everybody's like, oh, I just want to get out of 2020. Well, it's not like January 1st, 2021 at 12:01 a.m., the world corrects and Corona goes away and
right, yeah.
Political strife goes. I mean, we're still going to be riding this cycle for a while, but let's just keep positive. Let's move to the future. And what better way to do that than bringing back Theater of the Mind?
Right.
That's right. We have a brand new Theater of the Mind. We'll be airing that a little bit later on in today's program. We're also doing something fun starting back here in January. There's going to be an extra episode of Darkness Radio every week. On Friday, you'll be able to hear Holzer's Ghosts, where we're going to ask you, the listeners, to go back and watch season 1 of the Holzer Files. It is on demand on Travel Channel. It's on demand on Sling. And if you have the Discovery Plus program now, the Discovery Plus app, you can stream those there. But go back, watch episode 1 of season 1, and we're going to do a revisit this Thursday night live on our Facebook page and our Darkness Radio YouTube page. So you can go subscribe, click the like button and subscribe and never miss a minute of the live stuff. And I'll be having special guests join me as we talk about the cases and go deeper into the cases, into the history, the hauntings, and other unusual things that took place. And I've got some special guests that are going to be joining me. I know for sure Cindy Case is going to be with me this Thursday as we go back to our first aired episode of season 1. Shane Pittman, it's up in the air. His father is in the end stages of life, unfortunately, with cancer. And our prayers and thoughts continue to go out to Shane and his family as they deal with this. So I'm not sure if Shane will be joining us on Thursday's program, but Friday there will be a brand new podcast episode of Darkness Radio, and you'll get 10 of those as we do 10 weeks. Each week I'm going to review an episode of the Holzer Files, and we'd love you to watch along with us. Check it out for yourself. Remember season 1. This should lead us right up to the launching of the second part of season 2, the final 7 episodes of season 2 that will air later on, beginning, I believe, in March. So keep that in mind. That's going to be some fun stuff that's going on. I want to do a quick movie review. I stumbled on a fun little movie. You can get it for about $4 or $5 on video on demand on most of your platforms now. Mm-hmm. But it's also at Redbox for like $1.80. The movie's called Love and Monsters. Have you seen anything about this movie?
I have, yeah. I've a trailer, I believe I've seen. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know why I went full Yoda on that. I apologize for that, but
a trailer I have seen.
Yeah,
it was, it was one of those movies. I'm like, all right, maybe I'll watch this. This has this, just from the commercial, has this vibe of kind of Harry Potter, zombie land with the kind of light humor, apocalyptic, world-ending, Walking Dead sense to it as well. But the concept is pretty simple. The world as we know it has come to a strange ending. All of our I don't want to tell people how it happens, but there's a threat coming to Earth, and all of the nations around the world attack the threat, and the fallout from that threat becomes an even bigger challenge. And I think it's like 90% of the world's population has been wiped out.
Wow.
And yeah, there have been all of these, creatures now, bugs and new things that have evolved and mutated. And everybody's in these little pods, these little family pods of people, survivors that they've collected. And our hero in this case, Joel Dawson, he ends up finding out that the girl that he was in love with prior to the apocalypse has survived as well, and she's in charge of another pod about 80 to 85 miles from where they are. That means he has to traverse 7 to 10 days on above ground in this new harsh environment to see her, and runs into some fun and interesting characters along the way. It's a really good flick, dude. Honestly, 1 out of 5 stars, 1 being crap, 5 is it's amazing. I'm going to go with a 4 3/4 stars on this movie.
Wow.
Because the effects are great. The story is fun. The characters are great. The activity is good. It's overall a fun movie. And it's something you can watch with your whole family. Maybe kids 10 and under might get a little wigged out by the monsters, but in this current climate and environment, maybe not. I don't know. But Love and Monsters, it's got some scares. It's got great special effects, but it's got a lot of fun and just rollicking good entertainment. So 4 3/4 stars out of 5. And I don't know why I'm holding back, but I just feel like it's not perfect. But
Okay.
it's pretty damn close. That's my entertainment value added to that. So that's that. Let's get started.
Someday I'm going to write my big opus and put it out there for everybody. It'll instead of the whole Love and Monsters thing, it'll be like Betrayal and Zombies, where it'll be the real story where, it isn't the guy yearning and finally getting the girl and they've been in love all along. It'll be the girl, gets separated from the guy and goes, oh, you know what? I wasn't really that into him the entire time. And the guy's like, but I've been yearning for you and I came all this way for you. And she goes, yeah, but there's this guy over here. And
then let me just say this. Then you're going to Love and Monsters. But before you start putting pen to paper to pen your opus, watch Love and Monsters first, Tim.
Really?
That's all I'm going to say. I don't want to give anything away, but just kind of watch it. You'll see.
So I'll be pleased by this because it'll be like real life love, not like Hollywood love. Because really, what it is,
I don't want to give it away because there's beautiful elements to this entire story.
Yeah, but the girl's always like tepid, and she's never really in love. She's just in love for now until she gets what she really wants, which is never anything for sure.
Wow. She just cynical. Somebody needs a hug.
She just moves on to wherever she feels like moving on to at the time, and then just settles.
Pictures and love notes to Tim@darknessradio.com. Just he needs love. This COVID lock-in crisis is killing him.
And then she settles for what she thinks is her prince charming, and he ends up being an ogre anyways. Which she probably deserved it anyways. But I mean, she got what she deserved to begin with, which if she would have settled for the guy who really loved her, I mean, he was a prince to begin with. So fine, you got what you deserved there, mama.
Tim, did you take your meds this morning, buddy?
I did. I got them in. Yeah.
Okay. You might want to double them up next week.
Okay.
I'm just saying.
I'll think about it. Yeah. But I'm just
watch
saying.
Love and Monsters. I think you're going to enjoy the. As a matter of fact, this is your assignment, Tim. Watch Love and Monsters, and next week on the show, I want your thoughts on it. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. I can do that.
All right. Good.
Yeah, okay.
Since we're talking entertainment, Disney Channel wants to get into the paranormal. Tim, they have a new kid-friendly horror series called Secrets of Sulphur Springs. That's right. kids need horror too. And, you know, Disney doesn't want to leave anybody out. So they've come up with some kid-friendly frights here early in 2021 from an unlikely source. Again, courtesy of Disney Channel comes Secrets of Sulphur Springs. Now, in the new series, Griffin Campbell, who's played by Preston Oliver, and his family moved to the old Tremont Hotel in the town of Sulphur Springs, where the entire town believes that the hotel is haunted by the ghost of a girl named Savannah, played by Elle Graham, who disappeared over 30 years ago. When Griffin and his new best friend Harper, Dr. Sleep's Kylie Curran, try to solve the mystery of what happened to her, they find a portal that lets them travel back in time, where they learn the secret to solving the mystery is meeting Griffin's own father. Secrets of Sulphur Springs is coming to Disney Channel on January 15th, 2021. The first episode will be a 1-hour premiere event. And we have a link up to this story so that you can see the trailer for Disney's Secrets of Sulphur Springs. And actually watching it, it looks pretty compelling. And I think my kids are going to dig it. So there's that. Another piece of entertainment news, Tim, because I know you love entertainment and I know you love news.
Yeah.
So let's do entertainment news.
Okay.
The big question is, when is docuseries Surviving Death going to be released on Netflix? It's a 6-part investigative series examining life after death. And believe it or not, it arrives on Netflix this week.
Well, good.
That's right. Arriving on Netflix this week is a brand new docuseries, Surviving Death. It's a 6-part investigation into paranormal accounts of the afterlife. Directed by surviving Jeffrey Epstein, filmmaker Ricky Stern, the series interviews various subjects who've survived near-death experiences and caught a glimpse of a world beyond human experience. And here's everything that you need to know about the series. When is Surviving Death going to be released on Netflix? Surviving Death arrives on Netflix Wednesday. That's today, the 6th of January, 2021. And what is it all about? Well, based on journalist Leslie Kean's book of the same name, the 6-part investigative series explores the possibility of an afterlife through interviews with those who've been close to and even experienced death. Surviving Death explores the questions that have been contemplated throughout time. What does it mean to die? And is death truly the end of our existence? Well, that's what Netflix teases. The series takes viewers to an extraordinary journey into a world beyond human existence as we know it. Executive produced by filmmaker Ricky Stern, this docuseries examines various personal stories about near-death experiences, reincarnation, and other paranormal phenomena. Netflix released a trailer for Surviving Death at the beginning of January, showcasing some of the cases to be explored throughout the series. So that's out and available. I will have a link up to that story at Darkness Radio so that you can see the trailer and get the information for that. So again, go to darknessradio.com and click on the news tab, and you'll see today's date, January 6th, 2021, and you'll see the news stories that we put up there that we deem you might want to check out, whether it's video, audio, photographs, weird stuff like that. More entertainment news, Tim? That's what you're asking for?
Well, sure.
All right, let's do it. The proof is out there. A journalist is attempting to explain the unexplained in a new TV investigation into everything from UFOs to aliens to Russia to lightning-proof humans. From a strange figure appearing in an Indonesian forest to lightning-proof humans and an alien creature found only in Russia. The world is full of strange and unusual sightings, but with science and technology, it seems these mysteries can now be solved, Tim. Veteran television journalist Tony Harris has set out on a journey to determine what is real and what is fake, and everything in between, with the help of experts during History Channel's latest series, The Proof is Out There. Harris takes an in-depth look at some of the most incredible and thought-provoking videos of unexplained phenomena and mysterious must-see moments of all time. I've become more interested in UFOs and extraterrestrials as the revelations have been coming out from various governments around the world, Harris told the Daily Mail. We have been moved beyond the tinfoil hat guy. This seems to be really interesting field, and as journalists, we're always interested in finding answers to big questions. And are you alone in the world? That's a pretty big question. The first episode begins with a video showing a group of motorcyclists riding through an Indonesian forest when a small human-like figure runs out from the brush and disappears into the trees. Residents in the area speculated that it may be a rare orang pendek, that once lived in the region, while others suggest it could be a member of a long-lost pygmy tribe. The proof is out there, showcases 30-minute episodes, with the first airing Tuesday, January 5th. That's yesterday. A team of experts from around the world have been brought in to help Harris determine what he sees in the clips. They use a number of scientific methods and technologies to evaluate each of the videos. For investigating video footage, the team is using such methods as macro block and motion vector analysis and geolocation. Macro block is used to determine authenticity of videos, as it compresses the clip into individual blocks and allows users to analyze each one individually. Motion vector allows viewers to see how content moves, and geolocation provides insight into the location of where a video was captured. Spectrogram analysis is used for audio and detonation, and gate analysis was conducted for evaluating animal morphology and biological analysis. So for all those people that have been screaming, "Science! We want science!" they're going to get a show of science, Tim.
Well, good. I mean, it's about time, Yeah.
Now, for the video showing motorists in Indonesia, Harris and his team investigate the two theories. Was it the elusive orang pendek, or a member of a long-lost pygmy tribe? An orang pendek is a creature in Indonesian folklore similar to America's Bigfoot, which lived in the forest in the island of Sumatra. The name means short person in Indonesian and was allegedly seen by villagers some 100 years ago, which may be why some believe the figure in the video was this long-lost creature. The forensic video expert took an in-depth look at the video to determine if the video is real or fabricated before Harris moved on to what the figure actually is. To answer this, motion vector analysis was used, which allowed the expert to see how well the video flowed and how the content plays out. We understand that we have a bit of mission to people who are true believers, Harris said. There are a number of videos out there that have gone unexplained, and we are using our team of experts to see what there is and what there is not. Another segment of the first episode shows a clip of humans who survive being struck by lightning and sometimes even hit twice in just a matter of seconds. The location of one video is unknown, although Harris speculates it's from China. It shows a man walking into his driveway, struck by lightning. After being hit, the man gets up, walks a few steps, and then is struck again. Lightning bolts can leave bizarre markings on the body called Lichtenberg figures, which appear to produce flowering patterns along a person's arm, leg, or anywhere on the flesh. There are also cases where people develop an immunity to electricity and can withstand lethal doses of electricity. Atmospheric scientist Dr. Deanna Hentz was brought in on these cases and found it peculiar that the man who was struck by lightning twice was surrounded by larger objects that should have taken the hit first. Mick West, a science writer who weighed in on the strange footage and notes that there are discrepancies. Together, Hentz and West used different computer modifications to determine whether the footage was authentic or not. The outcome will be revealed in the first episode. And then they do a third part of that episode talking about an encounter of the third kind. And I've got videos of this up again, Tim, this news story, which has many different videos highlighting some of those clips that we've just discussed. And that's, again, up at darknessradio.com under the news tab. How about them apples?
Them's pretty good apples. I keep thinking, though, when you talk about what'd you call it, the orang pendek, is that what it is?
Yes. Uh-huh.
I keep thinking that Randy Newman had a song about that a long time ago.
Short people got no reason.
Yeah.
How did that song become popular? I mean, it was so brutal and mean.
It was. I think people were into brutal and mean back then, though.
Yeah, I think they still are if you read the social medias.
They are.
Ghost Adventures. Zach Baggins faced extremely terrifying poltergeist activity at the Cecil Hotel. If you've got Discovery Plus, you've already seen the special. We talked with Jay Wasley, part of the Ghost Adventures team, last week on the program. As a matter of fact, you can still tune in and check out that episode. It was the first time Jay had ever visited with us, so it was great to have him visit with us. For a decade now, Zach has been trying to investigate the infamous Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles, the site of multiple suicides, murder, and satanic worshiping over the years. The hotel has inspired books, films, and even a season of the hit American Horror Story series. Now, Zach and his team, Aaron Goodwin, Jay Wasley, and Billy Tolley, take on the property for a 2-hour Ghost Adventures special, launching only on the Discovery Plus streaming service. I was literally shocked when we finally got permission to do this, Baggins 43 tells People exclusively. They said this is the first and the last time that they will ever allow a paranormal investigation, and they shut the place down to the public, which means It's even more badass. There's nobody staying there. While the team was already drawn to the hotel's dark history, including its connection to serial killer Richard Ramirez, who lived in the hotel during the 1980s, they were even more compelled to investigate following the mysterious 2013 death of college student Elisa Lam, whose body was found in one of the hotel's rooftop water tanks. That death has stuck with me throughout the years, and that's really what drew me to this hotel, Baggins said. I wanted to try to explore the theory that she may have been influenced by something, some kind of dark entity, possibly something even conjured by serial killer Richard Ramirez. During the 2-night investigation, the team retraced Lam's steps, including the elevator where disturbing security footage captured her exhibiting odd behavior. And while the team experienced physical afflictions, including unexplained scratches, it was a moment of paranormal activity that had the biggest impact on Baggins. Investigating alone in one of the hotel rooms where serial killer Jack Untwiger stayed back in 1991, Baggins says he witnessed the bathroom water faucet turn on by itself. I don't know what to do, he recalls. You had to literally twist a handle for the water to go on. That wasn't a motion-activated faucet. That's one of the most terrifying moments I've ever had. As for how he faces intense such fears on a regular basis, Zach insists it's all about perspective. You just have to tell yourself, calm down, he says. In the moment, I'm scared because of what's occurring, but I'm also being confirmed that there's more proof of an afterlife, which to me is rewarding. The 2-hour special Ghost Adventure Cecil Hotel is now available on Discovery Plus. But Dave, Discovery Plus, why do I have to pay to watch my favorite shows? Well, Travel Channel is continuing with their programming on Travel Channel, but they're making ad-free versions and bingeable versions, so you can go back deep into all of the series that you love to watch and watch all the old episodes completely commercial-free, all under one roof. But it's not just Travel Channel, it's all of Discovery Channel's networks. So their food channels, their animal shows, their this, their that, the other. It's all under one umbrella, so your $5 a month fee gets you access to every one of those shows, which truthfully is better than most cable deals. And if you're looking to cut the cable bills and you're looking to pare off some things, buying the Discovery Plus platform is going to give you that access. I'm not meaning to turn this into a commercial for that, but being part of that family, I can understand people's concerns. And they keep asking me what's going on with Holzer Files. As far as I know, we're returning in March to the Travel Channel, but season 1 of the Holzer Files is already up at Discovery Plus, so you can watch it there. So just throwing that out there. Tim,
yeah,
that Harvard astronomer who talked about Oumuamua, that strange thing that flew past our planet, he believes now, he is more confident than ever, that was, in fact, an alien probe that visited us in 2017.
I happened to see him this afternoon on TMZ talking about it,
Yeah. Abraham Avi Loeb led Harvard's astronomy department for longer than anyone in its history, from 2011 to 2020. And now he's doubling down on what could easily be his most important and controversial hypothesis from that period. Loeb believes that Oumuamua, an oddly shaped object that briefly visited our solar system back in 2017, was most likely truly an alien probe. You probably saw the artist's illustrations of Oumuamua as a cigar-shaped asteroid. Its shape and movements, it seemed to speed up as it left our neighborhood, but without any discernible trail of gases like we might expect from a comet, baffled scientists and led Loeb to a far-out conclusion. I submit that the simplest explanation for these peculiarities is that the object was created by an intelligent civilization not of this earth. He writes in the introduction for his upcoming book, Extraterrestrial, The First Sign of Intelligent Life Beyond Earth. The book is set to be published by Houghton Mifflin Harcourt on January 26th. It also lays out the potential implication of Loeb's conclusion for science, religion, and the future of humanity. Despite Loeb's long career in astrophysics, astronomy, and cosmology that includes a long record of publications on heady topics like the nature of black holes and the development of galaxies, his ideas about Oumuamua have been controversial among scientists, to say the least. Oumuamua was the first interstellar object to be seen passing through our solar system, and it was a big science story in the last few months of 2017. But it wasn't until a year later that the spotting of that strange space something finally went full-on mainstream viral. That's when Loeb and postdoctoral researcher Shmuel Bailey published a paper, first suggesting that Oumuamua may be a fully operational probe sent intentionally to Earth's vicinity by an alien civilization. Since then, Loeb has garnered worldwide media attention, while others in the science community have been critical of his potentially revolutionary conclusion. It's a shocking example of sensationalist, ill-motivated science. Fellow Forbes contributor and astrophysicist Ethan Siegel wrote in 2018. In the new book, Loeb addresses some of the criticism. To be clear, although I made myself as available as my commitments allowed, I neither sought the limelight nor particularly enjoyed it. He also accuses some of his critics of a sort of overly conservative group think when it comes to considering more exotic explanations for the anomaly that is Oumuamua. Loeb argues that such an unprecedented object as Oumuamua requires that scientists go where the evidence leads. One inference is agreed to by everyone who has studied the data. This visitor, when compared to every other object that astronomers have ever studied, was exotic, Loeb writes. And the hypothesis offered to account for all the object's observed peculiarities are likewise very exotic. So he's doubled down, Tim. He brought this up back in 2017, 2018, and now feels even more compelled that this, in fact, is an alien probe. Dude, we are getting there. I think some big shit's coming down the pipeline in the next year.
His interview with Charles and Harvey was very interesting in that he brought up a few interesting facts about Oumuamua itself. And
bless you.
Thank you. In that a specific part of the probe, he points out that, and I don't want to misspeak for him. I should almost on next week's Supernatural News, I'll try to find the audio of the interview if I can, and try to play it back for you so that you have his exact words as to what was compelling about it. It had to do with the fact that there was the fact that part of the probe was going one way and another part of it was going another way in relation to the rotation of the sun. So in other words, there was something that was alien on that probe that didn't quite look right, meaning that there was some sort of life actually on that probe. That's the best way I can put it. Yeah, there were other things that the good doctor was citing that are very compelling. So that made him think that there was something actually alive on it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, his book is out, coming out at the end of the month. We'll have to reach out and try to get him on the show.
Yeah, most definitely.
Our next story, Tim, is going to be an audio daily double. Tucker Carlson is annoyed. He has to wait for the COVID Bill's UFO report. Even as we're experiencing an extremely tumultuous period here in American history, Fox News talking head Tucker Carlson has been talking about UFOs and aliens more than usual lately, with new UFO segments coming almost weekly at this point. And in his first show of 2021, Tucker has been at it again, this time focusing on a weird provision of the COVID-19 relief bill. Let's go ahead and listen.
Speaking of conspiracy theories that actually have truth at the bottom of them, the Corona Relief Bill the president signed last month contains a provision that hasn't gotten a lot of attention. It directs the Director of National Intelligence, in consultation with the Secretary of Defense and the heads of other agencies, to disclose what they know about UFOs within 180 days. So what are they going to tell us? Nick Pope is an expert on this subject. He's former UK Minister of Defense. He's an official of the UK Ministry of Defense. He joins us tonight. Nick, thanks so much for coming on. What do you think we're likely to learn? Will they obey is the first question. Will they actually tell us what they know? And if they do, what will they tell us?
Well, this is going to be a very interesting year for UFOs, that's for sure, Tucker. And yes, they will definitely have to produce this report within 180 days. So we're going to get this by late June. it has to be unclassified, but can have a classified annex. So the answer, what the public will get, maybe not a lot, but what the Senate Intelligence Committee, the Armed Services Committee will get, hopefully a whole lot more, and hopefully some answers to these questions that we've been asking for months now. What is going on in our airspace? What has the U.S. Navy been encountering? And what is it that has been in these classified briefings that we know some senators have already had?
What do you think they're likely to reveal?
Well, it's interesting because Senator Marco Rubio said he would almost rather this was alien, because if it turns out to be China or Russia, then we're in big trouble, because the sorts of speeds and maneuvers and accelerations that these objects are capable of really is concerning. And I hope that we're going to find out about that. It's interesting, just before Christmas, there were some leaks. Sitting in Office of Naval Intelligence is an organization called the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force. They're probably the ones drafting this report. Some leaks suggest they have not ruled out the extraterrestrial hypothesis.
Yeah, and there may be physical evidence of the existence of these craft, whatever they are. Have you heard that?
Yes, I've heard talk of so-called metamaterials, and I think this report really will have to disclose. I mean, what the Intelligence Committee want to know is everything in government is fragmented. They want to know who knows what. They want a single official named and put in charge of all this, and this is going to include FBI, by the way, as well as the military and the intelligence community. We want answers.
Yeah, and I don't want to wait till June. Why don't they do it tomorrow morning and finally declassify the rest of the Warren Commission report while they're at it? And this is just nonsense, and I appreciate your help on this. Hopefully we'll find out very soon. Nick,
thank you.
Great to see you.
So there you have it. Tucker Carlson's on the case. He wants this thing coming out, and he wants it out sooner rather than later. I don't know, Tim. What do you think? Do you think they're finally going to come clear with this stuff, or at the end of 180 days, are they going to release some truncated version that's highly redacted and admit that there's some strange phenomena? That's why they've continued with their aerial force, but they're still not going to commit to anything.
I'm going to stick to my, it's going to line up right with my prediction at the beginning of the year, Dave, and that's this. At the end of 180 days, Joe Biden will be sworn in as president. And Joe Biden's been here before as a vice president. And during the Obama administration, there was not a lot said about UFOs. So I really do think it all goes back into the closet. I think you've had, under the Trump administration, you really have had this proliferation of information about extraterrestrials or UFOs, or at least you've had leaks of video and you know, you've had all kinds of neat stuff that's come out from the Defense Department. And I think all that's going to stop. I think it all gets put back in the closet now. I really do think that disclosure now becomes a moot point. I think we go back to the old ways now. I think President Trump was enamored with it. I think it really was. I think he was almost to the point of spooked by it. I think because President Trump was not a Washington insider and not used to hearing about the subject or being around the subject, it did spook him to the point where he did form Space Force, where he did think, you know what, there is a legitimate threat out there that we have to tackle. Okay. So
we'll see.
I think
at the end of 180 days, I'm hoping for something. I think, I don't know, man, with all the people coming forward and all the soft disclosure taking place, I think there's something more on the horizon that no president or world leader is going to be able to hide from us anymore.
And see, I really do think that now that there's another Washington insider in office, I think it all gets kind of put back into the closet.
No, I guess we will wait and see. Stay with us, folks. When we come back, I've got stories from people that believe they're witness to glitches in the Matrix. We also find out how a group of professional mediums lost to a control group in a psychic test, and what is the creature that's living in the air vents in a Brisbane hospital, Tim. And here's something compelling. We got this news story legitimately like 5 minutes after we finished recording last week's news, but Paul McCartney is speaking out. It appears he's in contact with the spirit of George Harrison in a very unusual way. We've got that plus an all-new Theater of the Mind coming up. Stay tuned. You're listening to the best in paranormal talk radio. I'm Dave Schrader. That's Tim Dennis. And this, of course, is Darkness Radio. Welcome back to the program. Now, Tim, in the ParaShare aspects of our show, we like to let people write in and share their own strange encounters and tell us about their weird experiences with the supernatural.
Yep.
They can email those stories to us at dave@darknessradio.com if you just want us to read them. If you want us to portray them as an upcoming episode of Theater of the Mind, please write it as a nice narrative, usually about 2 to 3 pages long, where you've got your spell check, you're correct. You just read through it out loud once or twice to make sure that it flows and you see any potential problems, and send that over to us. I want to thank a few of the very creative writers who have sent in some submissions. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to read those. There are a few that go off the rails in the world of naughty, Tim.
Oh.
I guess people just thought I wasn't going to pre-read these and I would just go into a cold read.
Really?
And which I've done with some of the emails in the past.
But
for Theater of the Mind, we're definitely taking more time with those stories.
Okay.
But yeah, I sent you one for certain that stood out to me. And it's Mothman and Me. So the author of that, well played, but much too weird and filthy for us to ever play on Theater of the Mind.
not gonna give me a crack at doing sound effects of the naughty, huh?
No.
Okay.
We've come so far from that part of you, Tim. Let's stay far away from that.
All right.
Stay far away. Let's just stay far away from that. But here's a news story, article, blog, whatever you want to call it, that came out that, kind of fits into the news and ParaShare stories. These are 16 people that share stories of their personal encounters with the paranormal, or as they're referring to them, as a glitch in the Matrix. So whether or not you believe in ghosts, spirits, or anything spooky, we've probably all seen or heard something in the middle of the night that just could potentially be a window into the supernatural world. While most of the time there's a perfectly logical explanation for the loud crash at 3 a.m. or flickering lights, some people absolutely swear they've seen human-shaped visions, ghosts of their dead loved ones, or other mystical and terrifying images. Then there are moments in life where it seems we're all trapped in some strange simulation, and our controllers took a coffee break. Bizarre coincidences or sounds and sightings that you swear are not possible can happen every now and then and become a repeating story in the family. If you're a natural skeptic, you probably are used to sleuthing for tangible truth or evidence that this Ouija board has clearly summoned a ghost, but certain stories will forever remain a mystery. So when a recent Reddit user asked, "What is your personal encounter with the paranormal?" people were ready to share their creepiest experiences with a seemingly alternate universe. Story number 1. We joke about the girl who lives in our house. My wife insists that she was a victim of a fire in the schoolhouse in the 1870s that was on our property before the house was built. We've never seen her, but there is an occasional door locked or unlocked, or the errant attic light on, and so forth. Not a presence that is very strong or overbearing. There was one time, though, when my wife, who was in the kitchen, and I were coming down the stairs, and we both heard, "You're a good girl, Dottie," coming from the living room. Dottie is our dog. Trouble, but a good girl to be sure. Apparently, there is more than one person besides my wife and I in the house who agrees. Story number 2. Not me, but my dad. He grew up in a small village in Greece. It's the word, Tim. I don't know if you heard.
No, yeah.
One day on his walk home, it was storming quite heavily. He was standing under a tree in an attempt to wait it out. As he's waiting, he's approached by a slow old woman who he'd never seen before. She had an umbrella in one hand and a walking stick in the other. And she asks him, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm waiting out the storm so I can go home. I don't want to catch a cold." She tells him, "You have a very long life ahead of you. I would risk catching a cold if I were you." And with that, she starts to slowly walk down the street and out of sight. My dad waits for a few more minutes and then takes her advice. He starts walking home. A few more minutes pass and he hears an explosion. He turns around and sees the tree he was waiting under had just been struck by lightning and blew up. Frightened, he ran to his home, hoping to bump into the old woman to thank her, but he never saw her again after that encounter. He's convinced she was a paranormal being since he never caught up to her that night, even though she was so slow. He had never seen her in the village before or after that, and no one knew who he was referring to when he asked around for her. And that comes from Bored Kim. Story number 3. Just recently, about 2 weeks ago, I was on my way to Home Depot when I arrived at the stoplight. After sitting there for 15 or so seconds, the light turns green. As soon as it did, I felt like I couldn't move at all. I don't know how to explain it, but it felt like if something was telling me to not go just yet. After about a second or two, this red Ford Explorer barrels through the intersection, running the red at what must have been about 50 miles per hour. I don't know how much exactly, but it was ridiculously fast. After the car sped through the intersection, I could move again. I don't know what that something was, but had it not been for that moment, I would have probably not been able to tell you all this little story. And that comes from Haymarket Hector. Haymarket Hector, one of my favorites, Tim.
Yeah.
Story number 4. 1 week after my great nan passed away, I, 3 at the time, told my mom that I had seen her in my bed and that she had told me to tell my mom, her daughter, that she was okay now. I don't think I could even comprehend death. Very spooky, and that comes from Millie 2000. Number 5. When I was 14, I was staying at the night at my friend's house, and we decided to sleep in the guest room instead of her own bedroom. She kept telling me she thought the room was haunted, and I thought she was just trying to wind me up just before she went to sleep. She mentioned it again. At that moment, everything suddenly went really cold, and the radio randomly switched on and started making weird static noises, even though no one touched it. My friend refused to sleep in there ever again, and that comes from the Peculiar Pirate. I love the names as much as I love the stories.
Yeah, the alliteration's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Story number 6. Growing up, my sister and I were good friends with our neighbor Matt, who had a dog named Molly. Molly ran away one day, and the 3 of us set out into the nature preserve behind our houses to look for her. Matt's brother, Chris, set out separately, and the preserve is an old dam mill from the 1700s that is rumored to be haunted. When we got to the mill, we saw Chris and the dog on the other side of the river, maybe 30 yards away. "Matt, I got her. I'm bringing her home," Chris yelled. But something didn't feel right, and the 3 of us gave each other a look. We headed home knowing Chris would be a bit behind us since he'd have to go a mile or 2 out of his way to cross that bridge. When we got home, there was Matt's mom and the dog. She was under the porch the whole time, she said. A little while later, Chris showed up, having never even gone into that part of the woods. And that's from International Pi 400. With a name like that, it's got to be true, Tim. Sounds very prolific.
Yeah, of course.
Story number 7 tells us, I think I lived in a haunted dorm room. My roommate and I kind of assumed the previous tenants were joking when they said they summoned a ghost, but it felt like bizarre, unexplainable nonsense was constantly happening in that room. About once a week, we would both wake up from a dead sleep at exactly the same time, 3:06 a.m., and both our phones would be glowing or the radio and the TV would turn on simultaneously. One night, we were laying in bed and everything on top of my roommate's wardrobe fell to the floor. Our toilet water turned red one day and stayed black for like 2 months, then went back to normal. It was never clogged and kept working just fine. It just looked really off-putting. When we were showering, the shower curtain would get yanked open. Over spring break, I was one of maybe 12 people staying on campus. I woke up one night to a loud snoring coming from my roommate's empty bed. I laid as still as I could for what I felt like forever until it finally grew quieter and quieter. Terrified of what would happen or what I would see if I rolled over, it was constant and always felt creepy and slightly malicious, like the ghost was just screwing with us. One afternoon, though, that changed. I'm not a napper, like at all, but that day I just really needed a nap. I curled up under a blanket at the foot of my bed, facing the door. At some point, I very groggily woke up and could tell someone was in the room watching me. I was scared at first, but when I opened my eyes, I saw the vague outline of my grandpa sitting in the doorway. It was like a wave of relief. I felt so safe and comforted by his presence. That semester was really, really challenging for me, but it felt like he was checking in to make sure I knew I would be okay. I've never shared that with anyone because I just knew it was him. There wasn't like a cool concrete proof or anything, but all that weird shit from the other ghostly friends stopped after that. And that comes from Staring Out in Wonder. Story number 8 tells us, when I was 19 or so, I had moved into my first apartment alone, and I got all my favorite furniture from the thrift store next door. They were pretty good finds, too. My favorite was a pair of red armchairs that I'd often fall asleep in while reading. One night I woke up, and there was a little girl sitting in the chair across from me. My lights were still on as I had fallen asleep reading, and I could move around, so I don't think it was sleep paralysis. She started playing peekaboo, so I played back. When I removed my hands after the third time, she was gone. I did have sleep paralysis at least 3 times a week in that apartment, but it was nothing like that night playing peekaboo, and that comes from Rapata Jesus 69.
What?
Rapta Jesus, like the rapture.
Oh,
Rapta
okay.
Jesus, okay. Yeah, 69.
Gotcha. All right.
Story number 9, my mom's experience with what she thinks was a ghost. She went outside around 10 p.m. for a cigarette years ago and saw a very elderly woman walking up our neighbor's back stairs to their veranda. Mom said she wanted to ask if she was all right. It was very rare for our neighbor to have visitors that late. They were also elderly, but Mom said she completely lost her voice and felt stunned, though she couldn't look away. She ended up getting out a hello, and the woman just disappeared. The next morning, Mom made a joke to our neighbors asking why she wasn't invited over for their nightcap and with their visitor, and they very casually said, "Oh, so now you've seen our ghost too." They were excited over it and not at all scared. Barry, the neighbor, says an elderly lady follows Evelyn, his wife, everywhere, and they feel pure comfort around her. But their own children and grandchildren are frightened by the lady on the stairs when they stay. And that comes from shiny_black dress, Tim. Number 10. One summer afternoon when I was younger, my family heard the music of an ice cream truck coming down our road. Ice cream trucks never come down our road. We ran outside and placed our orders and expressed our astonishment to the woman inside. "Really?" she said. "I come down this road every week." Sure you do," we all responded. She drove off. We never saw her again. I'm sure it was just a mistake on her part, but I like to think that there's an alternate reality where we get ice cream trucks down our street every week, and that comes from Wooden Clocks. I said clocks, Tim.
Oh, clocks.
Yeah, wooden clocks.
Clocks.
Story number 11. We lived in the same house with my grandparents. I was almost 3 years old when I walked into the kitchen where Grandpa and my parents were just talking, and I said, "Did you see Grandpa? He just flew away." A few minutes later, the phone rings, and you can guess the rest. I don't really remember all of it, but Grandma says that anytime she thinks about that, it's a relief because it reminds her that there is something on the other side. I'm not into spiritualism or anything, but I am glad if it helps her, and I think the story is kind of creepy, and that comes from Zoltan Sun 666. Zoltan Sun, Tim.
These
I wish I were big. Isn't that Zoltar? Or Zoltar, wasn't it?
That was Zoltar. These handles are amazing. I love them. Yeah.
Number 12, when I was little, maybe 5, I would walk into my parents' bedroom to crawl into bed with them. Many times when walking into the room, I would see a young girl in a white dress standing at the foot of the bed. I would be paralyzed with fear, but being young, I didn't think I understood what I was seeing. I could take agonizing steps forward until I could crawl into bed and then cover myself completely in their blankets. She never moved, spoke, or acknowledged my presence. She was just always there. And that comes from one Monty J. Story number 13. My wife of 22 years died earlier this year. She was every bit the happy homemaker. Every day after I went to work and she would make our bed like a soldier in basic training. It had to be just perfect, including the massive pile of throw pillars we had to unload every night and stack on a small couch in our room. During the last few months when she became bedbound, I, of course, had to take care of all the cleaning duties, which did not include a daily making of the bed. So the pillows remained stacked on the couch for months without moving. The night she died, I was woken by the sound of a fan in our room being knocked over. I turned on the light, and the pile of throw pillars, which had not moved in months, fell onto the floor and knocked over the fan, and that was about 2 feet away from the couch. I piled them back up on the couch and got back into bed. I checked the time to see how long I had been asleep. It was 2:12 in the morning. My wife is February 12th. And that comes from Norb.
The what?
Norb. N-O-R-B-D-P. Norb.
Must have been a member of Fat Albert's gang.
Hey. See how easy it is, folks? You can write short stories. You can write longer stories. You can write them on a boat. You can write them with a goat. You can write them here or there. You can write them anywhere. You can write your paranormal stories and send them to dave@darknessradio.com. These people are showing how easy it is. When I was a kid, I was playing with a puppet in my brother's old bedroom. There was literally nothing in the bedroom since we were renovating, just floors. I fed the puppet a Fruit Loop, opened its mouth, and the Fruit Loop was gone. I searched everywhere, but the damn thing ate a Fruit Loop, I guess. And that comes from International Pie 400. Story number 15. My parents' house has a ghost. When my sister, age 42, was about 5, she was talking about the Green Lady. Of course, us older 3 sisters made fun of her a lot. She continued for several years talking about the Green Lady. Then one day, when I, 48, was in the middle school, I went upstairs and heard a swooshing sound. I turned around to see what it was. There was a lady with a long green dress, like one from the 1800s, and dark hair tied up really pretty. Then, just like that, she was gone. I never saw her again, but my mom took in a little boy for a while for a family that needed us when I was in high school, and he always talked to a lady upstairs when he was alone. He was only 3 when he stayed with us. Also, lots of weird things happened in my parents' house. Cupboards would open and shut on their own, and the water faucets would turn on themselves. I don't know the history before the house was built, but it could have been newly claimed land in the early 1800s, and that comes from Frank Beaver. I prefer when a beaver's frank, Tim.
I do too. It's honest, it's there, it's frank.
We're here. Our last 2 stories from the Glitch in the Matrix cycle, Tim. 16. Several times I thought I saw a kindly-looking old lady standing guard over my son's bed when he was a baby. I would have moved or done something because it was so clearly there for a second. However, she was also clearly smiling down at him with affection and looked protective. I can't explain it better. At any rate, I didn't mention what I saw. After we moved, my wife told me she had seen what I saw. I never saw anything like her again. And that comes from Bondorf. Finally, story number 17 is here, Tim. My grandmother passed away when I was 14. Shortly after, I was home alone walking through the family room. My grandmother always wore a specific perfume, and I've always been super sensitive to smell, so when I caught a whiff of it as I was walking, I immediately associated it with her. I think she was checking in on me. I was the only one in the house besides my dog, but he wasn't the type to get into things, and we didn't have anything that smelled like that in our house. And that is written by You Can't Say No to Pizza, Tim. You can't say no to pizza, which is true. You just can't. Well, you could, but be some kind of dirty commie pinko freak.
Most pizza. I mean, think about it. I mean, sometimes, have you ever had like that weird pizza smell that you know it's not good pizza? It's just probably bad pizza. You probably want to eat the pizza, but it's not going to be great.
Is that like that Tino's pizza? It looks like cardboard and the cheese never browns and it's always weird.
Now, see, Totino's party pizza is good pizza.
No, not Totino's.
Oh, okay.
There was one just called like Tino's, Tinos. Oof.
I don't think I've ever had that.
Avoid it. Avoid it at all costs.
Okay.
Here's an interesting tale, Tim.
Okay.
A control group outperformed mediums in a psychic test. Yeah, you heard that right. Magician and renowned skeptic James Randi unfortunately passed away in October. In 1996, he famously offered $100 to anyone, $1,000 to anyone that could prove that they had paranormal abilities. Over time, the prize money grew to a whopping $1 million. Even with that kind of money on the table, no entrant ever made it past the preliminary tests. A public list of the thousands of contestants lives on his foundation's site. Numerous paranormal powers were claimed by entrants: dowsing circles, energy healing, spirit reading, and communion with the dead. The latter has been stated as a fact as long as we have written records. Ouija boards are still popular among certain sects. As with Randy's challenge, scientific studies have investigated whether the mediums can truly communicate with the dead. A recent study by researchers in Petaluma and La Jolla assessed whether mediums could tell what had caused a person's death. The short of it, a control group of non-psychics performed better than the self-professed mediums. William James believed mediumship worthy of scientific investigation. Botanist J.B. Rhine devoted his career to parapsychology, the branch of psychology he founded. While he claimed extrasensory powers to be scientifically valid, his results were never replicated, and his methods were questionable. Numerous psychics, clairvoyants, and channelers continue to claim to hold paranormal powers today. The research team behind this study, led by brain researcher Arnaud Delmera, has previously analyzed brain activity, skin conductance, respiration, heart rate, and peripheral blood flow of self-professed mediums during one 2013 study. 4 mediums produced results above chance, seeking a neural correlate to psychic powers. They write, one medium showed a decrease in the EEG frontal midline theta waves during accurate responses, suggesting a possible decrease in executive functions associated with successful responses. A limitation of that experiment was its low statistical power due to the relatively small number of participants and numbers of trials. Now, a follow-up study was conducted in 2018. The researchers wanted to know if mediums could identify whether a person was alive or dead based on photographs. After looking over 404 photographs, 5 of a dozen mediums performed better than chance. As there was no control group, however, the team had to keep testing. Now, for this study, a dozen professional mediums and a dozen volunteers were recruited. Every photograph was of a deceased individual. This time, the task was to identify whether the person died of a heart attack, a car accident, or from being shot. Each image was cropped in such a manner so that you couldn't easily recognize the cause of death. While giving answers, every volunteer was scanned for changes in neural blood flow and heart rate. The results surprised the team. Overall, participants were able to detect the cause of death of deceased individuals at statistically robust above chance levels. Contrary to our expectations that mediums would perform better than controls, the controls performed significantly better than the mediums. I wonder, Tim, if that's because the control group had no expectations. They knew they weren't mediums, so they weren't being hindered by the pressure. But real mediums wanting to get it right, is there that dilemma of feeling judged, that kind of puts kind of like a stifling wall around you a little bit. I'm not trying to give an excuse, but let's face it, we all seem to do better on things that we have no expectation for than on stuff that we've really tried hard to achieve, right?
Yeah, that's true.
A lot of times that happens. What do you think?
I think, there's something to that. Yeah, I think you're onto something there. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Now, while there were different neural responses between controls and self-professed mediums, they didn't correlate to correct answers. Even from beyond the grave, James Randi is still waiting, though it appears no one will be able to verify his impatience. And there is a video involved with this, how to squash a paranormal claim, and it's from Big Think. It's Amazing Randi talking about it. So I'll include this news story as well. over at darknessradio.com, click on the news tab, and you'll be able to find that story and the other information behind it. Let's see, where are we going to go? Oh, how about this? This has got a picture, so I definitely will be putting this up. This is creepy, especially having had my own paranormal experience in a hospital.
Mm-hmm.
A creepy figure in a Brisbane hospital air vent frightens patient and confuses the internet. A photograph of a mysterious figure in a Brisbane hospital air vent has confused the internet, with many questioning, is it a ghost? A woman shared images to a Facebook group on the weekend with her mother-in-law, which they had taken of a creepy shadow in an air vent above her hospital bed. One photo is from a distance, which shows a shadowy figure in the corner of the vent. A second picture is zoomed in, which shows what looks like eyes peering out of that vent. She shared them with a caption explaining that her family member felt as if something was looking at her and kept thinking nurses were coming in the room. I would blink and it would move, look around the room. Sometimes it was there, other times it wasn't, she wrote. She could feel something looking at her, keeping an eye on her. She would think the nurses were coming around to check on her and people touching her, waking her up, but there was nobody in the room. Members of the Australian Paranormal Group agreed the images are quite terrifying. Hell no, that looks like fingers, one person wrote. Another said, I hate hospitals. This is why I won't go there. People pass away. No way you will ever see me there. A third agreed it could have been a paranormal experience in reply to someone suggesting it might be just insulation. The woman thought it was the nurses waking her up. She could feel someone touch her. Insulation doesn't come and go. So very interesting because hospitals are full of spirits, the person commented, while another offered the idea that it could just be a possum. Definitely, I've had one peer at me from aircon vents, a second person agreed. I don't know. It's a weird picture. It's up again, folks. Go to darknessradio.com, click on that tab, and you will find for you the picture. Let me know what you think. Just go to news. All right, we've only got a few stories left. Before we do that, let's reintroduce Theater of the Mind. For listeners that may not be familiar with Theater of the Mind, it's you, the listeners, a time for you to shine. How do you do that? Well, it's simple. You can write a narrative story, very nicely written, usually 2 to 3 pages is well enough, paragraphs so that I don't have to read one giant block of text, and include sounds. Be very specific so that we have a little to work with when it comes to sound effects. I opened the creaking door slowly. My footfalls could be heard on the old oak wood floor. Something like that. I'm not asking you to fake your story in any way, shape, or form. Just give some more descriptors to it so that Tim has a little something to work with. So you can email me your stories, dave@darknessradio.com. I'll read them, and Tim will animate them, if you will, by putting music and sound effects behind them. Or you could do like this listener did, and he actually recorded the story for us. He went one step further, which I always appreciate when people take that extra time to do something like this and give us an insight into their world. So we've got a story actually recorded by our listener, and we'll go ahead and let you listen to that right now. It's time for Theater of the Mind.
Hey, Big Dave. What's up, Tiny Tim? Scribe here calling from up in God's country. I'm a horrible procrastinator and a terrible public speaker, but I can half-ass write. So I'll read this to you now. Bear with me. I heard your call up for stories, and I thought I better answer your call so maybe one day you'll answer mine. So for the past few years, I've been tuning into paranormal radio, listening in for signs and synchronicities to help me on this Blues Brothers mission I've got going on. And you guys are one of the few shows that I found them. I won't get into all of that. God and religion is a tough pill for some to swallow, which I don't get, because God is the paranormal. You know the cute blondes he sends to guide one down the path. Right, Dave? But everyone loves Ouija board and demon stories, and I have the mega badass of them all. Well, it's actually 2 stories. A 2 for 1. Now, to everyone at home, I promise you, you'll not be as lucky as I was. Okay, so bear with me, because I am the scribe, so it is a story. A very true story. My story. Once upon a time, there was a boy who could see. This threatened the darkness, for what can be seen can be changed. It lurked around every corner the boy turned, keeping tabs on him, until the forces of light intervened and kept him safe, at least for a while. But curiosity got the best of the boy, and one day he sat down with some children to play the Ouija, only for a laugh and maybe a scare. Round and round the planchette went, around the no and past the yes, spelling out answers to the children's questions. They laughed and giggled until the board went quiet, and in came a new spirit. This one was aggressive. It moved around the board with much more speed and force, and its answers had attitude. The boy was afraid, and his hair stood on end. The air grew thicker in that bedroom and harder to breathe. He asked for its name, and it spelt it out. The name that I won't tell you now, for names give power, or can take it away. The boy knew it was a demonic name and panicked. Now the boy loved all the 80s horror movies, had seen every Jason and Freddy flick, and ate up movie monsters, but this was the spirit world. This was altogether different. The kids picked up on his fear and asked the demon how the boy would die, and it told them. They then asked when. That was enough for the boy. He jumped up from the board. He swore at the other children and made it home. Now traumatized and afraid, he went to sleep, holding the rosary his mother gave him. The boys slowly forgot that night, and life carried on. The seasons changed, but stupid little boys do stupid little things. Once again, a new bunch of kids pulled out the Ouija board, this time at Grandma's house. Having more pride than brains, the boy laid his hands upon the board again. Round and round that goddamn planchette went. The spirits answered the kids' questions until it stopped dead, and the boy just knew. The spirits ran, like how a minnow flees from the shadow of a bigger fin. It was him, the demon. The kids asked him questions, and he gave snarky answers. All the while, the boy knew it wanted him to play. Round the board the planchette went, always pointing back to the boy. They asked its name, and it spelt it out, the same damn demon name. The boy had enough and stood up from the board. "What the Jesus are you kids doing?" Grandma broke in from the room's doorway. "Get that goddamn thing out of my house," she said in her East Coast accent. Now once she settled, she sat the boy down to give him a talking to, he thought, but she was giving him a warning. She told him a story about the new neighbors who moved in next door when they lived back east, how they found an old table with a board carved into it, hidden away up in the attic of the home. She and Grandpa were invited over one night for a couple drinks and maybe a game. As they asked it questions, it got mad when Grandpa would play it. They asked what was wrong, and it pointed the glass to use as a planchette at him. Then the table pushed him into the wall. Grandpa jumped up and yelled, "Aha, you bastard!" Threw the rosary he had hidden in his pocket down onto the table. It then flipped upside down and bounced all over the floor. The group took it outside and burnt it that night. Now that's a pretty scary story, and the boy should have been afraid. But something had changed for him that day. He was no longer alone, and none of that shit would ever scare him again. Pretty cool, eh? Well, this demon that had entered the boy's life would eventually make contact with him. But that's for another day. Nah, just kidding. That would be such a douche move, right? Okay, hold on and buckle up. I'll introduce you to my shield. Its rage and hate seemed to dissipate as the days passed. It felt drained. Everything that powered it was slipping away. There was a pain now, not like the wounds that had suffered in the Great War, but a dull ache that was always there. It had last been summoned for its report a turn ago. He was to keep watch, that was it. No contact, just watch. The boy was growing, and no, there was not a sense of him being touched or anything unique or special. The kid did what these human children do, as far as he could assess. Well, except the boy would talk to himself. But it wasn't internal. It was as if the boy spoke to him. The boy believed and had such faith as these human children tended to have, that if he prayed hard enough, change would happen. And be damned, sometimes it did. He kept watch and did not intervene. The demon did not feel himself, if this is what feeling was. This worried him. The pain it felt, was it for the boy? Was the boy causing the pain? His black smoke tendrils had turned lighter, a shade of gray. This wasn't the way it was supposed to go. He would change the boy, not the boy change him. There was a lot of activity around him. What attracted the dark entities was the boy's light, exactly what he was sent here for. He scared most off easily, but it was relentless, the pursuit of the boy. Slowly, it knew its mission was about to change. It wasn't going to let anything happen to him. It would protect him at all costs, and it would have to hide the boy to keep him safe. He was going rogue. What it didn't know was, it was becoming the boy's shield. So yeah, pretty badass, this story? And pretty hard to believe. But you know, Tim will back me up. Just contact him at 555. Anyways, it took me a long time to realize I had this shield. And reluctantly, I accepted my gift and began to write. Not very well, but write nonetheless. But it didn't really come easy, and a blur at times, or nothing at all. And I'd watch the news and see the hate and violence out there, and I'd really feel helpless. If I could get the story together, maybe I could stop some of it. If people only knew the truth. I got tired of sitting on my hands. Here I had this big, scary soldier of hell, all jacked up on the light, seeking redemption, and we're not doing anything. So I started. The darkness fiends for children, so I made it the shield's mission to protect them. I'd listen for amber alerts and send the shield to protect the child, and it worked. The kids would be found safe. I started to reach out on social media to try to turn some of the darkness out there to the light, unknowingly leaving myself exposed. Now, my shield did warn me that he couldn't protect me if he wasn't with me, but I pushed him, and he went along. Then I pushed it too far, and the darkness knew. It goddamn well knew. There was an international incident where some kids were trapped in a cave, so I sent them in. Something happened in that cave, and in hindsight, it may have been a trap. My shield returned battered and unwilling to say what had happened. It wasn't long after we came under fire from a pretty heavy hitter, the heaviest, and I will not give his name. We got our asses kicked, and if not for an angelic assist, well, who knows? How does that song go? I came out of the darkness with a bullet in my hand? Well, kind of like that. After the battle, my shield went quiet, and I was exhausted and could no longer see. Well, not like I could. This went on for over a year until the horsemen rode, and we went into lockdown, and the world fell to unrest. But my shield had recovered, and I was back, and I could see, clearer than ever. Now, I really did think I had more time, that maybe I could prevent some of this. I was wrong, but I'm here now, and that's a start. Now, for all those out there scared and worried about what the future holds, there's hope. Because when you're being lied to on all sides, and there's no one left to believe in, well, guess who's coming? And he needs our help, people. I am the scribe, and you are being called upon.
Very cool. Thank you for sending in your story. Thank you for recording it and sending it in. That's a great way to step it up. I wanted to start off the year with a big bang. Here we've got two little stories from one guest who actually tells us both stories, narrates them himself. Well done. Thank you, the scribe. We appreciate that. All right, we've got just a few more news stories. We've got Blue Hawaii, Tim, UFOs over Hawaii. Paul McCartney speaking to the spirit of George Harrison at his Sussex home. But first, Tim, near the end of life, my hospice patient had a ghostly visitor who altered his view of the world. That's the article by Scott Jansen. For months, as I've visited Evan at his hospice social worker, he has been praying to die. In his early 90s, he has been dealing with colorectal cancer for more than 4 years, and he's flat out tired. As he sees it, the long days of illness have turned his life into tedious, meaningless dirge with nothing to look forward to other than its end. He's done. Finished. He often talks about just killing himself. On this visit, though, his depression seems to have lifted. He's engaged and upbeat, and this sudden about-face arouses my suspicions. Has he decided to do it? Is he planning a way out? You seem to feel differently today than on other visits, I say casually. What's going on? He looked at me cryptically. Do you believe in ghosts? He asked. It's not the first time a patient has ever asked me this. People have unusual experiences when they reach the end of their life, near death or out-of-body experiences, visitations from spiritual beings, messages delivered in dreams, synchronicities, or strange behaviors by animals, birds, and sometimes even insects. There are all kinds of ghosts, I responded seriously. What kind are you talking about? Well, you remember me telling you about the war, he asks. How could I forget? He traced his long-standing depression to his time as a supply officer for a World War II combat hospital. The war, he said, had soured him on the idea that anything good could come from humans and left him feeling unsafe and alone. Yeah, I remember. Well, there's something I left out, he said. Something I can't explain. He goes on to describe one horrific, ice-cold autumn day. Casualties were coming in nonstop. He and others scrambled to transport blood-soaked men on stretchers from rail cars to triage, where those with a chance were separated from those who were goners. I'd been hustling all day. By the time the last train arrived, my back felt broken, and my hands were numb from the cold. He grimaces and then swallows hard. What happened when the last train got there? I asked softly. We were hauling one guy, and my grip on the stretcher slipped. Tears started to roll down his face. When he hit the ground, his intestines oozed out. Steam rose up from them as he died. Evan rubs his hands as though he were still cold. Later that night, I was sitting on my cot crying, couldn't stop crying about the poor guy and all the others I'd seen die. My cot was creaking. I was shaking so hard. I even started getting scared that I was going insane with the pain. I nod and wait for him to continue. Then I looked up, he says. I saw a guy sitting on the end of my cot. He was wearing a World War I uniform with one of those funny helmets, but he was covered in light, like he was glowing in the dark. What was he doing? I ask. Evan starts crying and laughing at the same time. He was looking at me with love. I could feel it. I'd never felt that kind of love before. What was it like to feel that kind of love? I can't put it into words. He pauses. I guess it just felt like I was worth something, like all the pain and cruelty wasn't what was real. What was real? Knowing that no matter how screwed up and cruel the world looks, on some level, somehow, we are all loved, we're all connected. This turned out to be the first of several paranormal visits. Each time the specter arrived, he'd wordlessly express love and leave Evan with a sense of peace and calm. After the war, the visits stopped, he said. Years later, I was cleaning out Mom's stuff after she died, and I found an old photograph. It was the same guy. I looked on the back, and Mom had written the words, Uncle Calvin, killed during World War I, 1918. We talk some more, and then I ask, what does this have to do with your being in a better mood? He's back, he whispers, staring out the window. Saw him last night on the foot of my bed. He spoke this time. What did he say? He told me he was here with me. He was going to help me over the hill when it's time to go. As I'm formulating more questions, Evan surprises me by asking one of his own. You ever have something strange happen? Something that tells you that no matter how bad it looks, you're connected with something bigger and it's all going to be okay? A memory flashed into my mind. It was 35 years ago. It was after midnight, and I was asleep in a graduate student apartment at Syracuse University. A siren's blare woke me so loud it sounded like it was inside the room. Adrenaline pumping, heart pounding like a hammer. I sat up and wondered what had happened. Was it just a dream? From outside, I distinctly heard what sounded like a two-man stretcher crew talking. Bring it here, quick, one guy told the other. I heard a gurney being rolled across asphalt. I went to the window and pulled back the curtain, certain there was trouble outside, but the night was silent. Nothing was stirring in the parking lot. No one was there. Just before daybreak, Dad called to tell me that just a few hours earlier, my Uncle Eddie had been killed in an automobile collision. That was a tough day. As night fell once more, questions filled my head. Why did this happen? What was he experiencing when it ended? And was he scared? On the kitchen table sat up a beat-up radio. Some kind of malfunction occasionally caused it to turn off or on for no apparent reason. As my questions swirled, the radio turned on, and I heard the opening chords of the Beatles song, Let It Be. Not being a fan, I'd never listened closely to that song before, but this time I did. The music and words filled me with an almost otherworldly sense of peace and comfort. The song ended shortly after the radio cut off. For years, I tried to explain away those events. It must have been a dream, I told myself, or some kind of fabricated memory to fool myself into thinking that Uncle Eddie and I were connected in that moment. As for the radio, it was nothing but a random coincidence. Any other conclusion is just wishful thinking. Inside, though, a part of me knew it had been real. After nearly 30 years as a hospice social worker, I'm certain of it. And I have patients like Evan to thank, dying patients who have convinced me that the world we inhabit is lovingly mysterious and eager to support us, especially during times of disorientation and crisis. It even sends messages of love and reassurance now and then when we're in pain. I return to the present. Evan is looking at me, waiting for an answer. I feel grateful that he's pulled up these memories. Outside, a flock of crows takes off in unison and form the branches of an ancient oak. Yeah, I say with a nod, I guess I have. Scott Jansen is a clinical social worker with the University of North Carolina Healthcare Hospice. And that article originally appeared on Pulse, Voices from the Heart of Medicine, which publishes personal accounts of illness and healing. Very cool story. Very, very powerful story.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Well, since they bring up the Beatles, I guess I'll jump to this story. Paul McCartney claims to be speaking to George Harrison at his Sussex home, Tim. That's sweet to know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's the way he's doing it that's kind of interesting. Sir Paul McCartney has revealed that he communicates with George Harrison's spirit in a slightly unusual way. The rock star, 78, says he regularly speaks to his late Beatles bandmate through a tree at the entrance to his home. Sir Paul told American radio presenter Mary Louise Kelly that the tree was given to him by George shortly before his death in 2001, and he believes his spirit now inhabits that tree. George died at the age of 58 following a battle with lung cancer, but Sir Paul said it brings him comfort to know his spirit lives on with this giant fir. He told U.S. broadcaster NPR George was very into horticulture. He was a very good gardener. He gave me the tree as a present. It's a big fir tree, and it's by my gate. As I was leaving my house, I got out of my car, closed the gate, and looked up at the tree and said, "Hi, George." There he is, growing strongly. That takes me back to the time when I hitchhiked with him. George and John Lennon still have an ever-present presence. The pair first met in 1957 when George saw the Quarrymen, a skiffle rock group founded by John Lennon, performing at Wilson Hall in Liverpool. Soon after their meeting, the Beatles were formed, and the rest, as they say, is history. Their friendship endured following the band's breakup in the 70s. Sir Paul said the evergreen tree was a fitting symbol of their everlasting friendship. He said, "It's lovely. He gave it to me. I just planted it. But then, as the years go by, every time I look at it, I go, that's the tree George gave me. George has entered that tree for me. I hope he's happy with that." In the same interview, Paul spoke of his memories of songwriting partner John Lennon. He said he often finds himself thinking about John and sometimes even dreams about him. Sir Paul said it's family. We had arguments, but then I'm reminded so do families. He was a fantastic guy, and I do sometimes think, wow, I sat down all those years and wrote songs with John Lennon, and then went on stage and appeared all over the world singing them together. Similarly with George. Sir Paul's latest album, McCartney 3, came out on December 18th. He recorded the album spontaneously in 9 weeks during lockdown at his home in England. Very interesting. Talking to the ghost of George, who he believes is inhabiting a Douglas fir. I'm not making fun of Paul. I mean, whatever. If he feels a sense of spirit there, who am I to say it's not true?
And not to begrudge Sir Paul or anything, but I was reading an article right after I read that story, because I read that story last week. And then I read another article under related articles. talking about the breakup of the Beatles and why the Beatles never really got back together again. And believe it or not, it wasn't because John and Paul never wanted to get back together again. In fact, it almost happened. And it wasn't because John and Paul were the two that never wanted to get back together again, or it wasn't because John, Paul, and Ringo never wanted to get back together again. It was George who didn't want to get back together again. George,
son of a bitch.
George
That
was the
Douglas
one guy.
Fir son of a bitch.
It was the Douglas Fir son of a bitch. And you want to know why? And here's the kicker in this whole entire thing. And it kind of relates to this story, Dave, because he was the one who had the biggest problem with Paul. He didn't think musically that Paul was all that. In fact, when asked why he didn't want to reform the original four, he just thought Paul was on bass. He just didn't think he was that talented of a bass player.
Wow.
And just thought, I've grown as a guitarist. And when George wanted to contribute to the group, when he wanted to really put his 2 cents into the group, he was always kind of cast aside. And he really had grown as a musician on his own. And he had really started to flourish as on his own and do his own thing. So to want to go backwards and go into the Beatles again, no thanks. He was just as fine on his own as a solo musician in his mind as to regress and go backwards into the Beatles. And he said when asked what was it about Paul McCartney's bass playing that he didn't like, he said he's just a bit heavy on the bass. That's all. He's just a bit heavy on the bass.
He's just a bit heavy on the bass.
Yeah, not his cup of tea. So that was it. That's what kept them from reuniting. It was George and he just didn't prefer Paul's playing.
That son of a biscuit. But they did get together again later, and the three of them cut an album and
later
paid homage to John Lennon on it. Yeah.
Later they did. Later in life, he put it aside, and they did do the three of them did do an homage to John. But that's why the four of them at that particular time did not get back together and do the four of them, because at that point in his life, he felt like, I'm not going to regress. I'm not going to go back, and I'm not partial to Paul's playing.
Well, there's interviews. If you go to YouTube, there's a lot of interviews where George is very roll of the eyes at discussions about Paul after the Beatles broke up. You know, Paul worked with Ringo on a few things. And Paul made comments of, oh, man, I'd love to work with George. And George is like, well, it's funny. My phone never rang in all those years.
Yep.
So there was a weird dynamic there. But whatever. If Paul's coming into the waning years of his life and he feels that George has forgiven him. Listen, George was a man of peace and love and stuff. And, you know, he gave him a tree. And I want to say that there is something magical about fir trees. I remember Jeff covering that when we did Creepy Christmas.
I'm not saying that ill will stuck to the end.
I know that. I'm just saying it's interesting to see that could be going on. I will tell you, I'm excited that Hobbit boy, what's his name? Peter Jackson is working on that Let It Be documentary.
Yes. Yeah.
And, you know, if you've seen Let It Be, there was a lot of tension and tumult, and it wasn't how you wanted to think about it. And Paul McCartney put out a special thanks, and he's like, thank you. I knew that my memories were different than this, but I started to buy into the stories everybody told about how they didn't get along and how it was so bad. And if you watch the footage, there's a little snippet that Peter Jackson has released. You see that they're all having fun together, creating that album. Mm-hmm. And it was great to see. I'm happy that came out, and I think it's going to rewrite part of the Beatles' history.
Yeah.
Got a couple of emails here I'll cover, and then we'll do our last news story. Hey, Dave, there's been a couple of times recently you've mentioned that you were interested in any white sage and how it could possibly clean a house. Besides the fact that they have discovered that burning sage actually is an antibacterial. So burning it literally cleanses the air, but also take into account the spirit of the plant. I'm a 25-plus year practicing witch. I am not Wiccan. I follow an eclectic and ecstatic practice working with ancestral, natural, and fae spirits. I resonate with the term witch because I feel that speaks to who I am. So, plant spirits. All plants have an overarching spirit. So the spirit of white sage would be the embodiment and personification of that plant, akin to the spirit of a human in general. And then the spirit of that particular plant, like the spirit of Dave or myself, some are louder than others. I feel like that was pointed at me, Tim.
Yep.
Many keep to themselves, and many are reaching out to use humans for interaction. Just look at the amount of people being called to own and raise mandrake. Have an Instagram search for Mandragora officiarum. I believe that after a century or two of a bloom of technology, that the balance is returning and many are being called back to earth to follow with plant allies just as much as animal, to the understanding of the energies of the Fae, what our tiny brains see as gods, and taking back our personal natural power. Anyway, just like people work with the spirit of the fox or ayahuasca or San Pedro, people can work with the spirit of basil, rosemary, or sage, and even poison plants like myself, like mandrake, belladonna, and datura. Mushrooms, again, plant spirits. There is deep magic there. Hope this is helpful, and that comes from Lanaya. So it is helpful. Thank you for taking time out to explain that to me, Lanaya. I appreciate that. I didn't even think about that it's actually kind of the spirit of the plant that's helping.
Yeah.
Final email today, and then one final news story about UFOs over Hawaii that are pretty compelling. Happy New Year to you both. Thanks for the entertaining work that you do and help me with in the middle of the night. I have a story. It begins in 1968. I was about 9 or 10 years old, and my cousin Oscar was about 6 or 7. We visited our grandparents every New Year's Eve. They lived on Bayou Liberty in South Louisiana. Our families would gather and celebrate. The adults were busy rolling in the new year, and my cousin and I were playing in a guest bedroom. In that bedroom was a double window that faced the woods. As we were playing, we actually saw white sheets passing that window, a few of them. We looked at the window and then looked at each other. We ran out of the room screaming all the way to the adults gathered on the other side of the house. Of course, no one believed us. By the time we had nerve to check out the room again, nothing was there. About an hour later, the phone rang. My grandfather answered the phone. I heard him explaining that we were all fine. When he hung up, he had a funny look on his face. He explained that the little church at the beginning of our driveway was bombed. The church was a small African-American church, and it had just been firebombed by members of the Ku Klux Klan. Then they had come by boat and docked at my grandfather's boathouse and walked through our property and escaped by a waiting automobile. It took a few minutes to bring the two things together, but surely we didn't see ghosts that night. The white sheets and the church bombing. It's a story I tell every New Year's. Thanks for letting me share. Love you guys. And that comes from Jan. Thanks, Jan. That's a weird story.
That's, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Our final story of the day. A mysterious blue UFO was spotted over Hawaii, and the whole thing was caught on camera. And yes, I will include this story at darknessradio.com. Click on the news tab, and you can see the video for yourself. Remember how we had an alien invasion on our 2020 bingo card? Well, we might just be able to check off that box. It seems on December 29th at roughly 8:30 p.m. local time, eyewitnesses on the Hawaiian island of Oahu spotted an unidentified flying object in the night sky, prompting several 911 calls. As reported by Hawaii News Now, the UFO, which was caught on video, had a glowing blue oblong form described by one onlooker as larger than a telephone pole. It sailed across the sky for several miles before crashing silently into the sea. One witness, identified by Hawaii News Now, a woman named Mariah, saw a second UFO, this one with a whitish hue. The white one was smaller, was coming in the same direction as the blue one, Mariah told Hawaii News Now. It disappeared from her sight as it flew over a neighboring town. Local police reported the UFO sightings to the Federal Aviation Administration. In the event, there was a downed aircraft, but the FAA said that no planes had disappeared from radar in that area, nor were any deemed overdue or missing. But don't go putting on your tinfoil hat just yet. These sightings are not likely extraterrestrial in nature, according to this article, as is the case with most UFOs. In fact, some internet sleuths have already brought out a possible plausible explanation. The floating blue object bears a resemblance to an LED kite, as demonstrated in a video by fact-checking Twitter account UFO of Interest. So it turns out 2020 wasn't the year for aliens, but who knows what 2021 will show. I don't know. I don't know that this is a LED kite. It looks, I don't know. I guess if it looks similar enough, you got to throw the baby out with the bathwater. But interesting stuff. That's it for this week, folks. Remember, send us your Theater of the Mind stories, dave@darknessradio.com. Kind of like the story you heard me read about the healthcare worker, the hospice social worker. The way that was written was beautifully written in a narrative and would make a great Theater of the Mind. So if you've got a story, your own weird paranormal encounter, whether it's seeing Bigfoot, UFOs, playing with a Ouija board, aliens, ghosts, demons, angels, funny, happy, scary, sad, we want to hear your story. Email it to me, dave@darknessradio.com, or you can record it and send it to us, and we may use that in an upcoming episode. Or you can call our Voices from Beyond voicemail at 651-300-4977. That's 651-300-4977. And leave your voicemail. You can tell up to a 3-minute story there. And if it goes longer, just hang up, call right back, and pick up where you left off and continue the story. Tim will edit them together, and we will play them on an upcoming episode of the show. Thank you all for being a part of our world, and we will be back tomorrow. And with tomorrow's program, Tim, pretty cool. We're going to take a look at some of the haunted spots across the United States. It's a great story, many great stories. It's the realm of the supernatural USA. John Olson, our guest. We're going to talk about everything from black-eyed kids to UFOs, Bigfoot, cryptid creatures, and more. That's tomorrow. And then Friday, we've got that very special edition of Darkness Radio, Holzer's Ghosts. That's right. Thursday night, you can join me 9 p.m. Central Time for an hour on my Facebook live feed or on our YouTube page, on our YouTube Live. We're going to go on with Holzer's Ghosts, where we will discuss episode 1, season 1 of the Holzer Files. And I have special guests joining us to discuss that case. I hope you'll tune in. Friday, it'll be available as an audio-only download, so you can listen to the show there. That's it for me, Tim. Anything else to add today?
Nope.
All right. Remember to keep Shane Pittman from the Holzer Files and his family in your thoughts and prayers as they ready themselves to say goodbye to Shane's father, and pray for a swift and easy passing for him so that he may find his way to heaven and to his rewards. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll be back again tomorrow with more of the best in paranormal talk radio. I'm Dave Schrader. That's Tim Dennis, and this is Darkness Radio.